Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 100 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing pretty good.
I'm glad to hear it.
Me and my cold.
Man, I'm telling you got to get your immune system up, brother.
I know, man. I'm going to start taking some vitamins.
That wouldn't hurt.
I don't take vitamins.
You don't take much.
I don't do. You're right, I don't.
All right, so it's the big 100th episode.
It is, man.
We've already said we're doing the West Memphis 3 case, the murders of Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, Michael Moore. But I want to start this off talking about the Doodler.
Yeah.
Because I got an email from a great listener, Corey, with a news article about some new information on the Doodler. And that's a case that we did on Unsolved quite a ways back. I don't even remember what episode it was.
It's been a while.
But police have released additional information in the case. And you know, that one goes all the way back to the 1970s. So they have an updated sketch of what they think this guy looks like now. But they've also released an audio recording of a call to police dispatch that came in just before 1:30 a.m., not long after one of the homicides that was thought to have been the Doodler's first victim. And on this call, the man says, "I believe there might be a dead person on the beach. I thought I saw somebody lying there, but I didn't want to get too close because you never know what could happen." So the dispatcher asked this guy for his name, and he said, "No, I don't think that will be necessary. I just wanted to let someone know. Maybe he needs help or something. But I felt it was my duty to report it." So obviously this is a very old call.
Yeah.
This is like, 1974. Police have released it, and they're saying, you know what? We really want to talk to this guy that made this call back then. Number one, it could be the Doodler.
Could be.
People have a habit of inserting themselves into police workings, as we know killers do. It also could have been just a good Samaritan that wanted to report it, but really didn't want to get caught up in this thing. Didn't want his name in the newspapers on the headlines. But what's really interesting is that police have submitted some DNA evidence to the police crime lab, and they're waiting on the results. So who knows? This is a case that could heat up quickly like a Golden State Killer and be solved. And I think that's very exciting. And I know it's something that you and I will be following very closely.
Absolutely. Love to see that happen.
So I wanted to start the episode out kind of talking about it. We don't often have updates on cases, but when we do, it's exciting.
Yeah, so thanks, Corey, for that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's give our Patreon shout outs. We had Brenna Siebert.
Thank you, Brenna.
Claire Ann Russell.
Thanks, Claire Ann.
Chelsea Biggers.
Hey, thanks, Biggers.
Alicia Perry.
Thank you, AP.
Jeff Carter.
Hey, Jeff.
Samalyn Summerhays.
Summerhays.
Amy's Arts and Crafts.
That's a good band.
Cassandra Collins.
Hey, Cassandra.
Kirsten Pace.
Kirsten.
Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Agatha Corhonen.
So, Agatha, thinks mysteries and stuff.
Sure.
But how about Corhonen?
Very cool.
Corhonen.
Susan J.B. Carey.
Hey, I'm just going to say JB.
Janine Brown Phillips.
Hey, Janine.
Brian Nitcher.
Hey, Brian.
Tamara Tomko jumped out at our highest level.
TT, thank you.
Courtney Eddy.
Hey, Courtney and Eddie.
Anna Connors.
Anna.
Jordan Gardner.
Thank you, Jordan.
Julius Peter.
Hey, Julius.
Mark Minton.
MM.
James Can.
Almost close to James Caan.
It's very close.
You get a better table at the restaurant if you say James Caan, I'm telling you.
Mary Conley.
Hey, Mary.
And Kim Alcantara.
Alcantara.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
That's a dude.
This week we selected Kirsten Chan.
Hey, Kirsten.
Longtime supporter. Very much appreciated. We appreciate the new support, the people that stick with us month after month. We had some amazing PayPal support as well.
Sure
Sarah
did.
Richmond, Elizabeth McKisson, Pedro Luna, Joel Myers, and Ania Howard.
Wow. Thank all of you for that.
Thank you so much. We also had a monthly Patreon merch winner, and that's Jacqueline Golf.
Hey, Jacqueline.
Big LSU fan, big on Twitter, big on social media down in Louisiana. Wanted to mention some new T-Cat shirt designs that hopefully are out on the store by the time you hear this. Got some T-Cat, Team Gibby, Team Fergie, Team Mike. Stay safe. Keep your own time ticking. Gibby is my cousin.
That's a good thing.
T-Cat, it's interesting.
I like it.
So we'll see. I just wanted to throw some different stuff out there.
Did we get the chaps?
No, we did not get the assless chaps.
They're on their way. Still working on it.
Let's say Mike Honcho down the side.
Down the side.
Rex West on the other side.
There you go.
I also wanted to let everyone know that beginning in March, our older episodes of Unsolved are moving on to Stitcher Premium, along with a whole bunch of other podcasts. So anybody that subscribes to Stitcher Premium will be able to hear it. Hopefully the folks that are listening have already listened to them, and this will apply more to the newer people as they find us, but giving you a heads up, about a month away. So if you got to go back and catch up on some old ones,
now's a good time.
Now's the time to do it. Right now we got a brand new episode of T-Cat out, and we went to France.
Oui.
And we went back to the 1930s. We're talking about the murderous Papin sisters. Brutal case.
Oh, man, gruesome.
One of the worst, I guess you'd call it most horrific crimes in French history.
I really appreciate my eyeballs right now.
Yeah, no doubt. So definitely check that out. It's a good one. All right, Gibbs, you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All Time Unsolved?
I really am.
I think I said this on last week's episode. I know this case is technically solved, but I do believe there are a lot of people out there that do not think that Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. committed the brutal murders of these three young boys. But there's no mistake. There are a lot of people that believe they are guilty. And this is a case I've been wanting to do for a long time. You know, my fascination with this case, probably like a lot of people's, it started out with the documentary Paradise Lost.
Sure. Makes sense.
Which came out in 1996. The official title is Paradise Lost, The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills. I can remember back in the day watching this on HBO and just being captivated by it.
I always remember the Metallica music in the background too.
Yep. Yeah, that was interesting because Metallica was a big supporter of these three teenagers. They lent their music to the documentary.
Yeah.
I mean, most documentaries, you're not going to find Metallica music or the music from some big, well-known band.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to pay the tab to borrow that.
Yeah, buy the rights.
And things like that, for sure. Yeah.
But as new developments happened in the case, so they made a second, they made a third part. Those were produced and put out. Now, we have a lot of documentaries today, right? We're saturated.
Big time.
Especially true crime. Making a Murderer. I mean, The Keepers. You can just go on down the line. Back then, not nearly so much, right? In the 90s, you couldn't just get on Netflix and watch a true crime documentary anytime you wanted. You could watch American Justice, Forensic File. I mean, you could watch those type of shows, but not this level of inside documentary type thing. But as many are, right? These documentaries are told from the point of view that these three teenagers were wrongfully accused and wrongfully convicted, right? You go back to Making a Murderer. There's no doubt that that documentary, and you and I have talked about it before, we've met the people involved at CrimeCon. That documentary is told from a very specific point of view.
Sure it is.
And this one is too. And I think that over the years, that's led many people to come out in support of the West Memphis Three. It brought out major celebrities, you know, Johnny Depp, Eddie Vedder. There was a lot of people that came out in support of these guys, but I want to be careful and I want to make sure that we are, you know, diving into this case factually, looking at it from all sides, right? Not slanting it towards one way. Now, at the end, whatever comes out, comes out.
No, I think that's the best way to do it for sure.
And Gibbs, I'm not sure how many episodes this is going to take. There's a lot to cover in this case. You know, we definitely want to talk about the victims, something that I think is sometimes overlooked when people discuss this case in particular, because so much attention was put on the West Memphis Three and what happened to them. Because I think at the end of it all, whether you believe these three guys are innocent, whether you believe they're guilty, there's no doubt three young boys lost their lives. And I want to make sure we spend some time talking about them. But of course, we'll talk about the three teenagers convicted of the crimes who spent almost 20 years in prison. So you had Stevie Branch, Chris Byers, and Michael Moore were best friends. They were in the second grade at Weaver Elementary. They also had a connection with the Scouts. All three had achieved the rank of wolf in their scout pack.
I was a wolf.
You were?
Yeah.
I think you still are, but.
It was a good time, man. I remember those days. First time I got to use a knife.
In the Scouts?
Yeah. We took a bar of soap and we had to carve a dog.
In the bar of soap?
In the bar of soap.
And that probably started your fascination with knives.
It did.
All three boys were 8 years old, all born in 1984. Stevie was born in November, Christopher in June, and Michael in May. And I say Michael, but his name's James Michael Moore, but I'm going to call him Michael. These boys lived in what was described as a middle-class neighborhood in West Memphis, Arkansas. Stevie Branch was the son of Stephen and Pamela Branch. They divorced when he was little. Stevie lived with his mother, and then later with his stepfather, Terry Hobbs. After his mom remarried, he also had a 4-year-old half-sister who called him Bubba. That was her name for him, Bubba.
Nickname?
Yeah. He was 4 foot tall, weighed 65 pounds. And I think that's important. I think it's important to talk about, the age of these kids. I think it's important to talk about their stature. When we know what's going to happen, and we're going to get into the details.
Sure.
He had blonde hair that turned white in the summertime.
So you're not going to believe this, but that's the kind of hair I had until I was about 7th grade.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
People always ask me, where'd you get that blonde hair from? Out of a bottle? I was like, what are they talking about? My mom be like, they think you bleached it. I'm like, what? My hair was that white, during the summertime.
And then it would go back to blondish.
Just blonde, yeah. And, I don't know what it is now, gray.
Stevie Branch was a straight A student. He loved to read, sing. He watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He liked to do karate like they do in that show. His father, Stephen, who's also was named Stephen, lived in Osceola, Arkansas. Then we talk about Christopher Byers. His parents divorced as well when he was young, about 4 years old. But it wasn't long after his mother married a man by the name of John Mark Byers. And he adopted Chris. Now he went by Mark Byers, so I'll be calling him that as we go through this. Chris lived with his mother, Sharon, his adoptive father, Mark, and he had a 13-year-old stepbrother. Chris was 4 foot tall, weighed only 52 pounds. I mean, these were little guys, 8 years old.
Yeah.
He had light brown hair, and Chris was outgoing. He was very talkative. He questioned everything. He was curious. He loved to do cartwheels, paint with watercolors.
You did a lot of cartwheels growing up too, didn't you?
Loved it.
I know.
I couldn't do a cartwheel now if I had to. But according to Chris's mother, he was just a typical 8-year-old, right? Believed in the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the whole thing.
Why wouldn't you believe?
It's personal preference.
I don't understand. I don't know what that means. I mean,
do you think there's some kids listening to? I hope not. Please tell me there's no kids listening to this right now.
Yeah. If you are, they're real.
He had a nickname as well. People called him Wormer, family, friends, because basically, I guess as a young boy, he squirmed a lot. He couldn't keep still. He would climb on everything around the house. It even said that he climbed the curtains. Michael Moore was the son of Todd and Dana Moore, and he had a 9-year-old sister, Dawn. 4'2", weighed 55 pounds. Michael had brown hair, and he just loved the Cub Scouts. He loved him so much, Gibbs, that he often wore his scout uniform. Even though there was no meeting that night, he would wear it to school.
Yeah.
He'd wear it out to dinner. He didn't care.
Very proud of it.
Very proud of being in the Scouts. Teacher said that he liked math. He was also a jokester. He enjoyed making other kids laugh. And a lot of articles you read about this case, they talk about Michael kind of being the leader of this little group of kids. He was a natural born leader. I think people gravitated towards him. They listened to what he said.
Yeah. Kind of like people with you, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except for you.
Well, I beat my own drum.
I didn't know you were going to go there, but okay.
Well, we'll leave it at that.
Let's talk about May 5th, 1993. It was like a lot of other days for Stevie, Chris, and Michael. They went to school that day. School let out around 3:00 and they went home. Stevie's mother, Pam, said he went home after school, but he left pretty quickly. Chris wasn't home at 3:10, so he must have left very quickly after getting home because his dad got home, said he wasn't there. Mark Byers and Ryan, they left around 4:00. Mark dropped Ryan off at an appointment, and then he went and picked up his wife, Chris's mother, Melissa, from work. They got home around 5:20. Chris wasn't there. Mark had to go back out to pick up Ryan from his appointment. As he was driving, he saw Christopher. And from what he has told police, he took him home, but also gave him 2 or 3 whacks with a belt for leaving when he was told not to. And this is important. It's going to come up later on, probably not in this episode, but in one of the episodes that we do. Chris Byers was last seen by Mark Byers around 5:30 p.m. He was cleaning out their carport, another part of his punishment, but he would take off again. You know how kids that young are, Gibbs. Number one, they don't always listen.
That's true.
Sometimes they do what they want to do.
I know I did.
And these boys wanted to get together. They wanted to go out riding their bikes. And eventually, Mark realizes that Chris is gone again. And he started to get worried. The whole family was worried. Mark called police to report Christopher missing, and an officer came out to take a report. What the Byers family didn't know was that at this point, all 3 of the kids were gone and hadn't come home. They learned that Michael Moore's mother saw the boys riding their bikes away from her house up North 14th Street around 6 p.m. Some neighbors would later say they saw Terry Hobbs, Stevie's stepfather, with the boys sometime between 6 and 6:30. Now, Hobbs has said he didn't see the boys that day at all. But again, this is something that we will dive into in a future episode. So you have Michael Moore. He was last seen wearing his blue scout shirt with a blue and orange scout hat, riding his green bike. Stevie Branch was last seen wearing blue jeans and a white shirt, riding his black and red bike. Chris Byers was last seen riding his bike, wearing jeans and a long-sleeved white shirt. So the parents don't know where their kids are, right? These 3 boys. It's Wednesday night. Some of the parents are out combing the neighborhood looking for their children. There's, officers out looking as well. Some of the family members, Gibbs, searched until 3 a.m.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
I would. I'd be.
Oh, sure.
I think me and you would be out. You'd have to force us to go back in.
I mean, I think they called it off. They had to get some sleep. They regrouped the next morning. The police really get into the search heavy in the next morning. And they finally found the boys that next afternoon around 2:00. And what happened was an investigator saw a shoe floating in the water of this drainage ditch. And then they found a body. And then a little bit further down, they found 2 more bodies. Now, I've seen some differences on the timing. I've seen some things that said it was 1:45. The coroner's reports listed as about 2:30. I think it says approximately 2:30, but it's sometime in that range. And the three boys weren't all found right together. You know, they were some feet apart from each other in this shallow creek or drain. It's probably a drainage ditch is what it really is, but it ran through Robin Hood Park, a wooded area with a bunch of bike paths where children were known to play. This was roughly about a mile from where the kids lived. This area was also behind the Blue Beacon truck wash. It was said that there was only about 2 to 2.5 feet of water in this ditch. Each boy was found nude, and each boy was hogtied. We're talking feet to ankles with their own shoelaces. Police found some sticks that had been used to push down the boys' clothing, keep it held down in the mud, and most of their clothing was turned inside out.
As if it was taken off quickly?
Without maybe unbuttoning pants or, again, we're going through some of these details, but a lot of these won't really come into play until maybe episode 2 or 3, right, however many it takes.
Sure.
They only found 1 pair of underwear. 2 pairs were missing. That's strange.
It is strange.
Police also found all 3 of the boys' bikes, not that far away. The autopsies of the 3 boys were completed 2 days later. Each listed abrasions, contusions, scratches on many different parts of their bodies. All 3 autopsies also listed anal dilation, which I think have led some people to believe that they were sexually assaulted. Now, this would later be refuted based on the fact that dilation is normal after death. The coroner also did oral and anal swabs for sperm, but none was found. And this is tough, Gibbs. There's no way around it.
No.
We're talking about the deaths of 3 8-year-old boys. We're talking in detail about the autopsies. And you and I read through them line by line. They're brutal.
Yes, absolutely. And all 3 of the reports will talk about how each of the boys had multiple skull fractures.
Now, the cause of death for each boy was listed as multiple injuries. It literally says that, multiple injuries. But in the case of Michael Moore and Stevie Branch, it also noted that they drowned. And the coroner wrote something that really kind of shocked me in the autopsies for Michael and Stevie when he talked about, you know, the fact that they had drowned. He wrote, and this is a quote, "washerwoman wrinkling on the hands and feet."
So I guess he's referring to that look you get when you spend extended time in the water.
Yeah, you know, I always called it like pruning or...
yeah, I think people called it pruning.
Yeah. I never heard washerwoman.
Or washer.
Or washer, as you would say.
If he would have said washer, I've been like all over it.
I just had never heard that term, and maybe it is something that a lot of people know about or have used or have heard. I found it odd. No drugs were found in the system of the 3 boys, with the exception of Chris Byers. In his system, there were trace amounts of a drug called carbamazepine. This is a drug that is used by people who have epileptic seizures, but it can also be used to treat ADHD, which Christopher had. The part I struggle with is most accounts say that Chris Byers had a prescription for Ritalin. And I know we're going to get into this later because I believe from the research that Mark Byers had a prescription for this drug, carbamazepine. But there's no doubt, Gibbs, Chris Byers' injuries were the most brutal of the 3 boys. It's graphic stuff, but I also believe that it's necessary to get the full picture of these murders. So in addition to what we've already mentioned, Chris's genitals were mutilated. The coroner's report entry reads, genital mutilation, with absence of scrotal sac, testes, skin, and head of penis, with multiple surrounding gouging and cutting wounds. It's brutal. It's vicious.
Oh, it's sickening.
I mean, you are talking about the removal of this boy's testicles, the removal of part of his penis. It wasn't completely cut off, but the head was, and a lot of the skin. I know, very graphic, but they didn't find any of those things at the scene. Again, all things that I think are important, and it's why I want to point them out. Whoever did this took that with them. Whoever did this most likely took a pair of underwear. Is that important? Probably.
I think so.
The autopsy of Stevie Branch, it also listed some things about his genitals. It said very fine scratches on the shaft and head of the penis, but no determination of time of death. And this would become a big thing later on. Now, I think the coroner eventually would say that he believed they were killed sometime between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. And again, you know, timing is crucial when we talk about a case like this, when you're talking about alibis and where people were. I mean, time of death is huge. So one of the big things in this case we have to talk about is the police handling of the crime scene after they found the boys. I don't think, Gibbs, that the authorities in West Memphis had a lot of experience with a murder scene, especially one like this.
Yeah, this is on a much higher level.
3 young boys. You have water involved in this drainage ditch. It seems like they made a number of mistakes. They waited a couple of hours, reportedly, before calling the coroner. And by the time the coroner arrived, police had already pulled the 3 bodies out of the water and put them up on the bank.
Well, this is going to bring a lot of criticism for sure.
And deservedly so, I think, when you talk about how you should go about preserving a crime scene, this is not the way to do it. You know, we mentioned the documentary, Paradise Lost. I'm not going to talk about it a lot. You know, I want to do our own thing. But the one thing I will say about that documentary, the first one, within the first couple of minutes, you see very graphic images of these 3 boys after they had been found. You can tell they're out of the water. They're up on the bank.
Sure.
It's something that you're really not ready for. I mean, it's like minute, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how quick it is, but it's very early on.
Very early on. Very disturbing.
But I mentioned, you know, not preserving the crime scene. So you have to ask the question, how much key evidence was lost? How much was tainted in a case that's ultimately going to go national, right? This was a huge case, covered extensively and was throughout the years. The other thing that the police did is they released a lot of information to the media about the crime scene, about the injuries to the victims, very specific stuff. And that's something that you and I talk about quite often, is how much very detailed, specific information do the police let out, right? Because they want to hold a lot of it back so that when they have that suspect, they're able to corroborate what the suspect or multiple suspects say happened.
Yeah, it's important.
Are they telling the truth? Is the version of events that they're giving fitting in with what they know really happened at the crime scene? Well, the problem is now everybody knows, right? And especially around West Memphis, early on, people are talking about the sexual mutilation of Christopher Byers. So for a second, have to talk about West Memphis, Arkansas. It's located just across the Mississippi River from Memphis, Tennessee. In 1993, when these murders occurred, it had a population of about 28,000. West Memphis lies at the intersection of two big interstates, 40 and 55. So because of that, there's a bunch of truck stops in the area, and where the boys were found was not that far behind a place called the Blue Beacon Truck Wash. It's a place where big 18-wheelers would drive in and get their rigs washed. Again, is it important? The location of West Memphis, the fact that it lies at the intersection of two highways? Maybe.
Sure, when you start talking suspects.
Right. I think it's all important. Some of this stuff we will bring back up when we start talking about suspects. So I mentioned the town had about 28,000. They had 70 police officers at the time. It was said that a third of them were assigned to this case. They began rounding up people to talk to, transients, anyone around the area that they could question. There's no doubt, Gibbs, these murders shook up the entire community. They caused a lot of fear and panic. There were people quoted in the papers back then saying they were not going to let their kids out of their sight until police caught whoever murdered these boys.
Yeah, this was a big Bible Belt area too.
Yep,
so you had just some additional fears that were mixed in as well.
No, it's a good point to make, right? We're in the Bible Belt here. As people come forward to try to help police, tips start pouring in. Not long before this happened, there had been an episode of America's Most Wanted that dealt with the issue of Satanists and devil worshipers, human sacrifice. All of that plays very heavily into this case. All right, Gibbs, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsors. And the first one is BetterHelp. There's a lot of us out there that have something in our lives that's preventing us from achieving our goals. And if you're one of those people, BetterHelp online counseling can help. They offer licensed professional counselors who are specialized in a wide variety of issues: depression, anxiety, grief, so much more. You can connect with a professional counselor in a safe and private online environment on your own schedule. And anything you share is confidential. They have video chats, phone sessions, texts. There's all kinds of options. And if you're not happy with your counselor, you can request a new one at any time for no additional charge. And best of all, this is a truly affordable option. True Crime All the Time Unsolved listeners even get 10% off your first month with the discount code TCAT. So why not get started today? Go to betterhelp.com/TCAT. Then just fill out a questionnaire. That helps them assess your needs and helps them match you with the best counselor for you. That's betterhelp.com/TCAT. And if you haven't checked out The Real Real yet, you don't know what you're missing. They are the leading reseller of authenticated luxury from top designers. We're talking Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Rolex, Cartier, and hundreds more at up to 90% off retail. They get new items every day, and every single item is authenticated, ensuring that every item they sell is 100% authentic. You can shop or consign women's and men's luxury fashion, fine jewelry, watches, art, all kinds of things. You can shop online or visit one of their stores. New customers receive an automatic $25 off at checkout. I am obsessed with browsing the items at therealreal.com. Mostly watches. I'm into watches, but they have some watches that I've lusted after for a long time, and the prices are blowing me away. So again, shop in store, online, or download the app and get 20% off select items with the promo code REAL, R-E-A-L. That's realreal.com, promo code REAL for 20% off select items. So police followed up on tips in the early days of the investigation. They even reached out to the FBI profiling unit to try to get some help putting together a profile of the type of individual or individuals that could have committed these murders. They searched the FBI database for similar crimes, hoping to get some type of lead. They went door to door, talking to people in the neighborhood where the boys lived, questioning them. So at a certain point, a $25,000 reward comes out. It was offered up by some local businesses, There was some other businesses throughout the state. There was a lot of people wanting to help with whatever, tips, money. They wanted this case solved badly. The three boys were buried on successive days. Michael Moore was laid to rest on Tuesday, May 11th, Christopher Byers on Wednesday the 12th, and Stevie Branch on Thursday the 13th. A lot of media coverage locally at first, right? Especially in those early days. The papers were reporting that police had few leads, had no suspects in this case, but that's not really accurate. I'm not saying they weren't accurate in their reporting. They just didn't know what we now know. And that is, as early as May 6th, the day that the boys were found, the name Damien Echols was being thrown around as a possible suspect. Because I think very early on, Gibbs, we talked about it. Satanists, devil worshippers, police began to theorize that the three boys were killed as part of some type of satanic ritual. Who else could do this?
Right. Who could do something so horrific?
To kids so young, mutilate their bodies. It had to be someone so evil that they worship the devil. Had to be, right? This is what they were thinking.
Yeah, no other scenario.
And there was a juvenile officer, a guy named Jerry Driver. He had past experiences with Damien Echols, and this guy was convinced very, very early on, maybe even that day, that Damien could have been involved with the murders. So let's break down why that is. So first of all, the reason why Driver was involved with Damien in the first place is Damien had gotten into some trouble. He had run away with his girlfriend, was caught by police breaking into a trailer. So he ultimately was convicted of breaking and entering and second degree sexual misconduct. Well, because of that, he had a juvenile probation officer.
Sure.
This guy, Jerry Driver, he reached out to police, like I said, very early on, told them his suspicions. But he also told police that he'd been hearing a lot of things about Damien Echols. Now, he was hearing these things obviously secondhand from other people. He wasn't hearing them from Damien himself, but these were things about Damien Echols being in a cult, drinking blood, worshiping Satan, all kinds of things like that. And it's just the very next day after the bodies are found, May 7th, police questioned Damien Echols. That's how quickly it happened. They pressured him into admitting to the murders, but he said he didn't do it. He even offered up hair and blood samples to help prove he didn't do it. Now, to me, that's a big deal. If I had something to do with a murder, the last thing I would do is say, hey, won't you take my hair, take some of my blood so that you can match it against whatever evidence you have. So let's talk a little bit about Damien Echols. At the time of these murders, he was 18 years old. His real first name was Michael, but he was adopted years earlier by a man with the last name Echols. So when he legally changed his last name to Echols, he changed his first name to Damien.
Yeah, and I think later people will associate that with the movie The Omen, and that he did that for certain reasons.
It's all for you, Damien. No, I think you're right. Obviously, The Omen is a horror movie.
Yes.
It deals with some of the types of themes that people wanted to associate Damien Echols with. Now, what he would say later on, and I know we're fast forwarding a little bit, but at trial, is that didn't have anything to do with that. Back then, when he was younger, at the time that he was getting ready to change his name, he said he was really involved with the Catholic Church. They were talking about saints and people like that, and he took it from what he says, Saint Damien.
Yeah, that's the statement that he makes.
I don't know what the truth is. I can only go by what he said in court.
Sure.
Whether that's true or not, I don't know. What I do know is Damien Echols was strange by West Memphis standards.
Oh, for West Memphis, for sure.
Because
right?
you mentioned Bible Belt, and that plays into it here, right? Because Damien Echols dressed in all black. He wore like knee-high black boots. He had longer black hair, listened to heavy metal music. In 1993, in the Bible Belt, I think that would be looked at as out of the norm. And I think it was in this case.
Oh, yeah. You could have picked him up and dropped him off in New York City.
He'd fit right in.
Yeah, any major metro area, he he wouldn't have stand out alone for sure.
But in West Memphis, Arkansas, he did.
He certainly did.
He dropped out of high school. I think he got his GED, but he wasn't into school. He didn't want to go.
And he had some tattoos. But I think what most people will remember is the pentagram on his chest.
I think that was a big one. The other big one was the word evil in between like the knuckles, I think, of his hands.
And he just had some other miscellaneous tattoos on his body.
Yeah, he had a number of tattoos. Not all of them seemed as sinister as those did to some people.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, tattoos in the early 90s in West Memphis was probably a rarity.
Well, I don't know about tattoos. I think tattoos of a pentagram and the word evil was a rarity.
Oh, for sure. And you can say back in 1993, tattoos just weren't as popular as they are today.
Yeah, I think just in general, today, man, people, they've got whole sleeves and
oh yeah,
whole backs and whole chests and
from kids in high school to
sure,
seniors.
But people have tattoos for many different reasons. I really don't think a tattoo should be part of the basis of being deemed a suspect in a murder case.
No,
but I don't know in this case that that's not true. I think it all plays a part.
It plays a part in how they build his character.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how they viewed him and why they, from the very beginning, thought, okay, this guy could have had something to do with it. And really early on, Damien Echols is the key. Without the police looking at Damien Echols, they don't then look at Jason Baldwin. They don't look at Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. This is where it all starts. So that's why I don't want to harp on it, but I think it's very important. Now, later on, classmates of Damien's would say they were scared of him. There were stories told of him bringing a cat skull to school, playing with it during class. People said that Damien told stories about worshiping the devil. They said he wrote satanic themed poems, read books on Wicca, white magic. Some of this is true, right? And some other things that many people deemed strange.
Yeah. And more so in the area that he grew up in.
That's true. Again, time and place.
Mm-hmm.
Anything out of the norm is strange to some people. And, I talked about him listening to heavy metal music. He loved Metallica. He loved a lot of bands, but he also listened to REM and U2.
Huge bands back then.
Sure.
Still, U2 still huge.
He did things that normal teenagers did. But again, I think it's important to talk about the perception of Damien Echols in that community. His family was not well off. I think he was viewed as coming from the wrong side of the tracks. And I mentioned the trouble that Damien got in. I think it was about a year or so before the murders. So after his arrest and conviction, he apparently voiced some suicidal thoughts while he was in detention, and authorities sent him to a psychiatric hospital for several weeks. He was prescribed antidepressants. He was actually institutionalized a couple of other times before these murders. So again, I think all of this plays into why people believe that the West Memphis PD zeroed in on him so quickly. You go back to the juvenile probation officer. Damien had moved out of West Memphis for a little while. I didn't go into it in detail, but he had another probation officer in another state. a bunch of information about him was relayed to his probation officer in West Memphis.
Right.
Again, it was all, this guy's strange. He wears black. He reads weird books. He might be into worshiping the devil. So, that's where this juvenile probation officer gets a lot of this information.
And he's going to sell it to the police.
Yeah, he does. But I also think from the time he's kind of handed off, Damien Echols is kind of handed off to this guy, he's looking hard at him, because there was information that I saw in some reports that said Damien Echols had been questioned a number of times in other cases. There was a murder that happened like 100 miles away.
Yeah,
Damien Echols was questioned.
Damien said in an interview that I saw that he was used to the police coming to his door, questioning him about different crimes in the area just because of who he was. He just expected when something bad happened that somebody from the police department was going to stop by and talk to him.
I saw one story about, something being stolen off of a truck. And it turned out that the truck never even stopped in West Memphis. They figured out later that it obviously had to have happened somewhere else. He was like one of the first people that they talked to about this theft. So he was on people's radar. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing to take away from it, but they couldn't get him to confess, right? At the first questioning. And there's something big at play here. And it's the fact that there is a ton of pressure from the community on the police to solve these murders. 3 8-year-old boys murdered. The town wants something done. First of all, for the boys, right? They want whoever did this to them caught, punished, but also they don't want a killer out running around while their kids are unsafe.
No, you're exactly right.
That is a ton of pressure.
And it's going to be echoed throughout the community.
Sure. The problem is police don't have anything else. They have no clues, no suspects, nothing. So they continued on the Damien Echols angle and began talking to his friends. Now, they interviewed him a couple more times, very quickly. May 8th, they questioned Damien again, but this time along with his friend, 16-year-old Jason Baldwin. Damien and Jason shared some of the same interests, heavy metal music and literature. They were good friends, but they were also very different in a lot of ways. Jason Baldwin was a good student. He was smart. He was a talented artist. There were people at his school pushing him to go to college, study graphic design. But like Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin didn't come from money. He also had a minor police record. He had something for breaking and entering, and he had some charge for shoplifting, which was said to have been about $6 worth of candy. So nothing too harsh in his background.
Right.
I think all in all, he was a pretty good kid. Then 2 days later, May 10th, police questioned Damien again. This is 3 times in about 4 days. At this time, they give him a polygraph. And at the end of it, police said that Damien lied. During the polygraph, he was deceptive, and they concluded that he was involved in the murders. So they're even more hot and heavy on him at this point as a suspect, but still they really don't have any evidence that would link him to the murders. Then in steps a woman named Vicky Hutchison. Vicky Hutchison had recently moved to West Memphis. She had some warrants for bad checks. So I think she was trying to run away from those.
Right.
From the research that I saw. But it just so happened that on the day that the 3 victims were found, Vicky was in the Marion police station taking a polygraph. And this was over some money that had come up missing at her job. She had her son with her that day. And it was kind of a problem for the guy giving the polygraph test. But they were talking. about the 3 missing boys. Remember, this is the day they were found. And apparently her son said some things about where he knew where they were. He started talking about some place called the playground. And I won't go into too many details, but the boys were found pretty close to the place that he described, but there was no playground or anything like that. He also has told a bunch of stories over time about seeing men in the woods, killing kids, sacrificing people, said they spoke Spanish. At one point, he said that Mark Byers killed the boys. So anyway, he told a bunch of things to police over time, but what came out of it was that the police got Vicky Hutchison to wear a wire to try to get Damien Echols to incriminate himself in these murders. Obviously, there's something in it for her. If she's able to do this, they'll help her out with, I don't know, whatever legal issues that she's facing at the time. Not to mention the fact that there's reward money out there. That would be nice to have. So to do this, she enlisted the help of 17-year-old Jesse Miskelly Jr. She wanted Jesse to get Damien to come to her house, which ultimately he did. She was wearing a wire, but Damien never said anything incriminating on tape. The one thing that's interesting about this whole kind of subplot is that later on, police are going to say, you know what, the tape was inaudible. We couldn't understand anything on it. But Vicky Hutchinson would say she heard it. It was clear as day. So I always thought that was, something that was interesting in the case. Why would police say that the tape was inaudible? Was it because they didn't hear on the tape what they wanted to? That's what a lot of people will say in defense of the West Memphis 3. But Vicky also tells police a story. And this is about an incident that she claims happened just a couple of weeks after the murders. And the story is that Damien, Jesse, and Vicky went to a Wiccan ceremony, something that she called a witch's coven. And she said there was all kinds of stuff going on. Kids were naked. They were touching themselves. They were touching each other. There was a lot of satanic things going on. But the key is she claimed at this ceremony that Damien Echols admitted that he murdered the 3 boys. Again, something that we'll dive into in more detail once we get to the trial. That'll be in the next episode. But let's talk a little bit about 17-year-old Jesse Miskelly Jr. He was an acquaintance of Damien and Jason. I think they knew him. They knew of him. I don't think they were friends. From everything I've read, it's really kind of hard. I didn't get a great sense, Gibbs, of their relationship. It definitely wasn't the same as Damien and Jason. That's for sure. All 3 of the boys had lived in the same trailer park at one time or another.
Yeah.
Jesse Miskelly Jr.'s IQ was pegged at somewhere around 70. I've seen it.
Like 72.
I've seen it from 60 something to 72. I think it was somewhere around 70, but it's been said that mentally he was operating at the level of a young child, maybe a child as young as 5-6 years old in some areas, right, of his life. Jesse's birth mother abandoned him when he was very young, but the key is for him, he was diagnosed, but he never got the help with, the mental disabilities that he was diagnosed with over the years. He never got any help with them. But now Jesse's dragged in, right? You can see kind of how this went. Started with Damien. Then they talked to Jason because Jason is good friends with Damien. Jason tells him the same thing, right? I don't know anything about it. Then Jesse's talked to because of Vicky Hutchison, and his questioning happened on June 3rd. And it was his statements, Jesse's statements, that would bring the full weight down on all 3 of them. Damien, Jason, and Jesse. So I want to play just a small clip of his interview as we wrap up this episode. We'll kind of start it off next episode talking more about it in depth, because there are some criticisms, leveled at the police regarding this interrogation. How long did they talk to him for? He was 17 years old. How many times did they talk to him before they turned the tape on? So we'll get into some of that.
Yeah, that's a good point
in the next episode. But I wanted to play a little bit. I want people to hear Jesse as we're wrapping up.
Okay, Jesse, let's go straight to that date, 5/5 of 93. A Wednesday, early in the morning. You received a phone call, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And who made that phone call?
Jason Ball.
All right. What occurred? What did he talk about?
He called me and asked me could I go to West Memphis with him, and I told him no, I had to work and stuff. And then he told me he had to go to West Memphis, so him and Damien went. Then I went with him.
All right. When?
Wednesday.
All right. When did you go with him?
That morning.
At 9 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I went with them, and then
Now, were you in a car? Whose car were you on?
we walked.
Y'all walked?
Okay. Right. We walked, and then
Where did you go?
went up to Robin Hood.
You went to the Robin Hood. Explain to me where those woods are.
About Blue Beacon turquoise.
It's a little patch of woods.
Little patch of woods
Behind Blue Beacon?
behind it. Right back there behind it.
Okay. What occurred while you were there?
When I was there, I saw Damien hit this one boy real bad, and then he started screwing him and stuff.
So, you saw Damien strike Chris Byers in the head. What did he hit him with?
He hit him with his fist and bruised him all up real bad. And then Jason turned around and hit Steve Branch
Okay.
and started doing the same thing. Then the other one took off. Michael Moore took off running, so I chased him and grabbed him and held him till they got there, and then I left.
So just a little bit of it to kind of whet the appetite for the next episode. Now, I did cut some pieces out. There was a part in there where Jesse was not sure what boy he was talking about, so they were showing him some pictures, and that's how they came up with the name and things like that. But his taped confession is going to be one of the keys in this case, and it's going to be dissected heavily, throughout the years. I think you can make a lot of parallels to the Brendan Dassey confession in the case of Teresa Hallbach, that whole making a murderer thing. It's going to be dissected like that, right? In some of the same ways. Did he give this story on his own? Did they feed him information?
Right.
Again, we'll get all into all of that in episode 2.
Dive into it then.
We got so much more to go, though.
Oh, this is just the tip.
We're really just kind of setting it up for what's to come. More on the confession, the trials, the aftermath. And again, we're going to touch on other people that were either considered suspects or should have been considered suspects. But that's it, Gibbs. That's it for the first episode on the case of Chris Byers, Michael Moore, Stevie Branch, and the West Memphis 3. We got some voicemails. Want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hey, y'all. It's Amy from Virginia. I took a little break, been out sampling some other podcasts for like a year or something. But I had to return to my first love, which is True Crime All the Time and True Crime All the Time Unsolved. You guys are really awesome. I wanted to let you know that I really appreciate what you do, because if you guys didn't work hard to put out these podcasts, then I would be so bored on my commute, and I drive a lot for work, so I'd be super bored and not as interesting at family gatherings, because every time anybody sees me, they're like, hey, you want to talk about your latest podcast? What's going on? Who killed who? So, anyway, you guys are awesome. I love you. Yeah, rock on. Keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Cool.
Awesome. We love you too. They always come back, Gibbs.
They always come back.
Isn't that what you say?
I say they always come back.
It cracks me up. Family gatherings. Who killed who?
That's a good family gathering. That's a fun one there.
We should be invited to that one.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Zach. Actually pretty new to your guys' podcast. My old coworker actually got me hooked on you guys. I actually do loss prevention, and I sit in an office and I watch for crime myself all day, but I also sit here and listen to you guys cover crime, and it's really intriguing, very fun to listen to. You guys do a great job of covering every detail, and I appreciate the respect that you guys have for every single one of these cases. I just want to say keep up the good work, and I'll be listening.
All right. Great voicemail from Zach. We very much appreciate that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Hi guys, this is Lauren DeCoco. I'm calling from Vegas, Team Gibby, but I do think that you do have a really sexy voice, but I'm still Team Gibby. Anyways, I was just listening to the Unsolved from Michael Tardio, and I actually knew one of the sisters, Amanda. I actually went to school with her for becoming a drug and alcohol counselor, and I had no idea. She was kind of snooty, but I had no idea who she was until like a couple of years later. I saw it on Dateline NBC, but she used to talk about her sister, not in the most flattering way. So when I saw that, I couldn't believe it. But anyways, love you guys, and keep your time ticking. I know I said that wrong. Anyways, love you guys. Bye.
Lauren, you can say it however you want.
Yes, you can.
We'd love to hear those stories, these weird connections with the cases that we cover. We get some in voicemails. I get a lot of emails. We get a lot of emails.
Oh, you do.
Of people that have these fascinating connections. So Lauren is actually on both of the episodes that we put out. So she's a new Patreon on TCAT. We said her name on TCAT.
We did, yeah.
And then we just played her voicemail on TCAT Unsolved.
Yep. And she thinks your voice is sexy.
She does. She has the distinction of making both episodes.
Well, when you have a sexy voice like you have, you make things happen.
Oh, you're making me blush.
Yeah.
Hey, this is River. I'm the one that requested the Monique Daniels podcast, and honestly, I was having a really bad day until I heard that you guys did that one, and honestly, thank you, because it made me feel so much better. I love your show. Keep your own time ticking. Have a nice one. Bye.
River, I did that for you.
Yep. And I'm glad she called in, because you and I say it a bunch to each other. We can never remember. We get so many, emails and messages, and I can never remember the exact person that made the suggestion. Sometimes we'll get 4 or 5
from the same, for the same thing.
Make the same suggestion, but that one was pretty unique.
Yeah.
And we just can't remember the person that gave it to us to give the shout out. So I'm glad she called in.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you again.
All right. That's it, Gibbs, for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Or as Lauren would say, stay safe and keep your time ticking.
Hey, she can say it however she wants.
That's what I say.
That's what I'm going with. Man, so 100 episodes.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So think back, out of the 100 TCAT Unsolved, what are your favorite episodes to date?
For Unsolved specifically?
Yeah.
Oh, man. You're putting me on the spot.
We had some, all of them were good, of course, right?
Right.
All good.
What were we going to say? No, we had some real stinkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me, it would be the Walker family murders. There was just something about that case. And it's strange because that was episode 7.
Yeah, it's a really popular one, man.
It's been listened to a lot. And I think one of the reasons I liked it because I'd never heard anything about it.
Yeah.
And I like those cases when I can find some that I don't even know the general details, let alone the specifics. That was, that was over almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That we did that.
But I too like that
it.
one.
It was a good one.
Was one that really pulled you in.
It did. And I'm going to give another one because I can.
That's right.
You only asked me for one, but I really enjoyed the Amityville horror one.
Oh, that was.
I had a lot of fun doing that. You know, we brought Morph on. I liked it because we could really open up.
Sure.
And, you know, be a little more goofy. You know, it's hard. You and I have talked about it.
Absolutely.
It is hard when you were talking about, like this case.
Yeah, there wasn't hardly any room at all for any what we typically would do.
Right.
So.
Hard to even put like little spots of levity in because you're talking about the murder of 3 8-year-old boys.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be disrespectful, but you also want to try to find those levity points. It's just tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I agree.
I think as we go further into the next couple of episodes, we'll have more spots to talk about.
Yeah. I think the other cool thing about the Amity was the crossover.
Yeah, that was neat. And I've been looking for some other cases like that to do. So what about you?
Well, I think Walker was one of my favorites as well.
No, you can't say that. That's BS. I already said that.
It was.
No, we did. We both liked that one. I remember after doing it, we said, man, that was a good one that it flowed well. You know, sometimes things just flow.
Yeah. No, I did like the tube sock.
Mm-hmm. Tube sock was a good one.
Yeah. Made you wonder. Bizarre, different. You know, make sure, you know, things like that. Why would somebody go to that, you know, extra step? So
of tying the tube sock.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Gibbs. It's cool to think back about where we were, I don't know, 2.5 years ago, however long it's been.
Right.
With both TCAT and then, you know, a couple months later, TCAT Unsolved. And you just look at, oh my gosh, how much it's grown. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love it, and I know some people with Unsolved, they don't like that feeling of not knowing.
Sure, some people got to have the finality.
Yeah.
Of it all, and I understand that.
But also, I like this because it does leave you wondering.
And a lot of people say they like it more because of that fact.
Yeah,
they want to try to put the pieces of the puzzle together. They want the facts, and then they'll try to formulate things in their head. So it's just different people like different stuff.
Yeah. Well, we give them both.
But I think it's cool that we can do both.
Yeah. It works out well.
Oh, shit, Gibbs. I forgot to hit the button.
Oh, we just left it running?
Yeah, we're still talking. That's all right. I'll just leave it on.
There you go. It'd be, what do they call that? A
Easter egg.
Easter egg. There you go. They got an Easter egg.
Bye, everyone. Hey, TCAT listeners, don't forget The Real. Amazing luxury items at up to 90% off retail. You can buy, you can consign your own items. New customers receive an automatic $25 off at checkout. You can shop in-store, online, or download the app. But make sure you use the promo code REAL, R-E-A-L. That's therealreal.com, promo code REAL.